Viewer discretion advised. Please be advised that this video includes translations of historical speeches or works, recreated using advanced AI tools to replicate the original voices and styles. These reproductions may contain controversial, sensitive, or outdated viewpoints and language. The content is presented in its historical context and does not reflect the views or values of this channel. Viewer discretion is advised, particularly for younger audiences.
Разрешите выразить благодарность от имени нашего съезда.
It seems to me, comrades, that certain American comrades fail to understand the position that has been created now that the draft of the Commission has been adopted by the Presidium. Apparently, comrades do not fully realize that to defend one's convictions when the decision had not yet been taken is one thing, and to submit to the will of the Comintern after the decision has been taken is another. One might, and one ought to have, criticized and fought against the draft of the Commission if the members of the delegation considered it was a wrong one. But now that the draft of the Commission has become the decision of the Presidium, the American delegates should have the manhood to submit to the will of the collective, the will of the Comintern, and assume responsibility for carrying into effect the decision of the Comintern. We ought to value the firmness and stubbornness displayed here by 8 of the 10 American delegates in their fight against the draft of the Commission. But it is impossible to approve the fact that these 8 comrades, after their views have suffered complete defeat, refuse to subordinate their will to the will of the higher collective, the will of the Presidium of the ECCI. True Bolshevik courage does not consist in placing one's individual will above the will of the collective, above the will of the Comintern. True courage consists in being strong enough to master and overcome oneself and subordinate one's will to the will of the collective, the will of the higher party body. Without that, there is no collective. Without that, there is not and cannot be any collective leadership. I think you will not deny the Russian Bolsheviks' courage, firmness, and ability to defend their convictions. How did any group of Russian Bolsheviks usually act when they found themselves in a minority? Not wishing to break the iron discipline of the party, the minority as a rule conformed to the will of the majority. There have been tens and hundreds of instances in the history of our party when a section of Bolsheviks, convinced that the Central Committee of the Bolshevik Party had taken a wrong decision, nevertheless, after discussion, after hot dispute, after defending their conviction, would declare their complete readiness to conform to the decisions of the higher leading collective and carry them into effect. I might mention such an instance which took place in 1907 when a section of the Bolsheviks were in favor of boycotting the Duma, whereas the larger section of Bolsheviks were for a change in policy in favor of participating in the Duma, and the minority unreservedly submitted to the will of the majority. The Russian Bolsheviks would have ruined the cause of the Russian Revolution had they not known how to conform the will of individual comrades to the will of the majority, had they not known how to act collectively. That is how we Bolsheviks were trained, the Bolsheviks who overthrew the bourgeoisie, established the Soviet power, and who are now shaking the foundations of world imperialism. Ability to act collectively, readiness to conform the will of individual comrades to the will of the collective. That is what we call true Bolshevik manhood. For without that manhood, without the ability to overcome, if you like, one's self-esteem and subordinate one's will to the will of the collective, without these qualities, there can be no collective leadership, no communism. And that is true not only in respect to individual parties and their central committees. It is particularly true in respect to the Comintern and its leading organs, which unite all parties of communists throughout the world. Comrades Gitlow and Lovestone announced here with aplomb that their conscience and convictions do not permit them to submit to the decisions of the Presidium and carry them into effect. The same was said by Comrade Bloor. What they said amounted to this, that since they do not agree with the decision of the Presidium, they cannot submit to that decision and carry it into effect. But only anarchists, individualists can talk like that, not Bolsheviks, not Leninists, who are obliged to place the will of the collective above their individual will. they talk of their conscience. But the members of the Presidium of the ECC also have their conscience and convictions. What is to be done if the conscience and convictions of the Presidium of the ECCI conflict with the conscience and convictions of individual members of the American delegation? What is to be done if the American delegation in the Presidium received only one vote for their declaration, the vote of Comrade Gitlow, while the remaining members of the Presidium unanimously declared themselves against the declaration of the American delegation and in favor of the draft of the Commission? Members of the American delegation, do you think that the conscience and convictions of Comrade Gitlow are above the conscience and convictions of the overwhelming majority of the Presidium of the ECCI? Do you begin to understand that if each of us starts to act according to his own will, without reckoning with the will of the collective, we shall never come to any decision, we shall never have any collective will, nor any leadership? Let us take any factory or plant. Let us assume that the majority of the workers of that factory show an inclination to go on strike, whereas the minority, on the plea of their convictions, declare against the strike. A war of opinions commences, meetings are held, and in the end, the vast majority in the factory decide to strike. What would you say of 10 or 20 workers representing a minority in the factory who declared they would not submit to the decision of the majority of the workers since they were not in agreement with that decision? What would you call them, dear comrades? You know that such workers are usually called strike breakers. Is it not clear that strikes, demonstrations, and other collective actions of the workers would be absolutely impossible if the minority did not subordinate itself to the majority? Is it not clear that we should never have had any decisions or any collective will, neither in the individual parties nor in the Comintern, if individuals and minorities in general did not submit to the will of the majority, to the will of the higher collective? That is how it works out, comrades of the American delegation. American delegation. Finally, a few words as to the fate of the American Communist Party in connection with the decision adopted by the Presidium of the ECCI. The comrades of the American delegation regard the matter too tragically. They declare that with the adoption of the draft of the Commission, the American Communist Party will either perish or in any case will totter on the brink of a precipice. That is not so, comrades. More than that, it is absolutely ludicrous. The American Communist Party lives and will continue to live in spite of the prophecies of the comrades of the American delegation. What is more, the American Party, if it drives unprincipled factionalism out of its midst, will grow and flourish. The importance of the decision adopted by the Presidium consists in the very fact that it will make it easier for the American Communist Party to put an end to unprincipled factionalism, create unity in the party, and finally enter on the broad path of mass political work. No, comrades, the American Communist Party will not perish. It will live and flourish to the dismay of the enemies of the working class. Only one small factional group will perish if it continues to be stubborn, if it does not submit to the will of the Comintern, if it continues to adhere to its errors. But the fate of one small faction must in no case be identified with the fate of the American Communist Party. Because one small factional group is liable to perish politically, it does not follow that the American Communist Party must perish. And if it is inevitable that this small factional group perish, then let it perish, as long as the Communist Party will grow and develop. You look at the situation too pessimistically, dear comrades of the American delegation. My outlook is optimistic.
If you have suggestions for other historical speeches or works you'd like to see recreated, please leave a comment below with your recommendations. Your input is invaluable in shaping our content. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more unique and thought-provoking content. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.